All right, welcome back. Even our TVs in the studios won't work. Probably disappointed about the NHL lockout. But, let's move on to another topic, guys. Let's talk about the BMW Championship that happened over the weekend. Rory McIlroy held off a bit of a challenge from a couple guys, including BJ Singh, and captured the BMW Championship. Is now one win away from taking the whole FedEx Cup. Certainly an interesting race. He's not the only guy. He needs another good performance now in 2 weeks' time, rather. Your thoughts on him and his chances of actually winning it all?
You've got to think his chances are pretty good. I mean, he's the hottest player on the tour right now, and he's playing very well. But, I mean, there's so many guys. I mean, those fields in those golf tournaments are so deep. I mean, it could be a guy we've never heard of before. It could be, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson could come out of nowhere. I mean, who knows? Really, you'd be lucky to give him maybe a 25% chance of being the winner of that tournament, which is probably pretty high in golf these days.
Yeah, you do always have your front runners in golf, but at the same time, like you said, there's always seems to be one player or two players that kind of jump out of the woodwork coming on Friday, going into the weekend that is a contender. So for him to win again on the tour, to capture it, yeah, he's got a good chance, but there's a whole lot of golfers out there that's going to probably beg to differ that.
You got some great golfers too. We'll talk about Graham DeLaet, one Saskatchewan boy, and David Hearn, the other. Had strong performances this week, definitely showing that they are a part of the upper echelon of the PGA Tour, definitely guaranteeing themselves a chance at the PGA next season and playing in some of the majors. Your thoughts, do they have what it takes to kind of actually take the next step and maybe even win a championship?
Well, I hope they do, because it's great, especially for Canadian golf. I mean, we saw what Mike Weir did for the game in Canada a few years ago just by basically winning one tournament when he won the Masters. And if these guys can play consistently and be there, maybe not win every tournament, but if they're getting top 10, 15 finishes, obviously they're going to be making a pretty good living for themselves. But it's nice for Canadian kids to see, what, I'm from Saskatchewan, I'm from Alberta, I can make the PGA Tour as well. Yeah,
especially a guy from Weyburn, Saskatchewan, Graham DeLaet, in Saskatchewan, not known for their great golfers, because we only golf how many months during the summertime. But at the same time, you can't go to any town in Saskatchewan and not find at least some kind of golf course on it. So it's great to see. Will he win a tournament? Like we said just before, there's so many great golfers out there every weekend that has a chance to win a tournament. And Graham's now just one of the many in the mix, and hopefully one of these weekends he may pull off one.
No, it's exciting, like you mentioned. Great to see some Canadians actually do well. Let's move on to the Toronto Maple Leafs in this situation with ESPN. They came out in the article saying the Leafs are the worst sports franchise in North America. If you're not a Leafs fan, you would put a smile on your face and say, I totally agree. But in this case for you guys, your thoughts on that? Edmonton Oilers also in the bottom half of that group. Is it fair to say, or is it just kind of a little bit of a loop? Because if you look at some of the teams, Oklahoma City, one of the top ones. Is it a little biased, perhaps? Because it is ESPN. It's in the States.
Well, I think they're taking it from the perspective of a casual fan, right? And if you're going to look at Toronto, I mean, they haven't won in 50 years. They've been out of the playoffs how many times? They went through the struggles through the 80s and 90s. Even now, their tickets are supposedly the most expensive in the league. It's the most expensive beer to buy, the most expensive popcorn. So as a fan, you know what? They might be near the bottom of the barrel. And you can say the same thing, the Oilers in the last 6 years, they haven't been in the playoffs. Their tickets are very expensive. I mean, you're going to pay $8 to get a Canadian there. From a fan's perspective, I can see what ESPN is saying, and having been down through the U.S., to basketball games and stuff, it's cheap to get in, it's cheap to be there, and it's entertaining. And Oklahoma's been winning. So I can see why they'd be near the top. It's just disappointing that they don't take in factors like ownership. I mean, the strong ownership of the Oilers, the strong ownership of the Maple Leafs, to kind of balance some of these things.
They bring in money, they have popularity.
Well, look at Toronto. You can't get a ticket. I know I've been in Toronto trying to get tickets for Maple Leaf games. Finally did get one, but it's difficult. They're sold out all the time. So a terrible franchise, but you know what? They sell out all the time. The Oilers pretty well sell out all the time too. So if you're judging it, they must be judging it for the fact that how an American maybe views Edmonton and Toronto and the great picture of things.
You have to always remember too, in this same survey, the top-ranked NHL team was the Phoenix Coyotes. I mean, come on.
Up here in Canada, we laugh about that.
Yeah,
but down there, they.
I mean, how many people do we know from Lloydminster that can go down for a Phoenix playoff game and get tickets? Absolutely no problem. That would never happen in Edmonton. You'd have to sell your first, second, and third born to get playoff tickets in Edmonton.
And if you ever
Never mind that, season tickets as well.
And if you even had playoff tickets available in Toronto, they would be hard to get. But of course, the Leafs have to make the playoffs to get that happen.
Yeah, and well, that's going to be a while then too. Exactly. You have a better chance of selling off your kids before you got that see the Leafs in the playoffs. All right, let's move on to the NFL. A game that started last week, or the season for the NFL guys, especially with Robert Griffin III. Huge performance by a rookie. There were 5 rookies that started at the quarterback position. Griffin had over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, led his team to victory, the only one to do so out of those 5 rookies that started. Are you really impressed with Robert Griffin's performance, and do you think that he could keep this going long term?
You know what, I think he can, maybe not at the 300-yard-a-game level, but he brings an energy to that team, and what impressed me the most about watching him play is he does everything at full speed. We didn't see that from a lot of guys where, you know, they're going to roll out slow and they're going to take their time on things. He does everything fast, from his release to running with the ball to just handing it off. Everything is done at top speed, and looking at him, I don't think he knows any other way to do it rather than full out. So, you know, I think he's going to have great success, and Redskin fans have to be totally excited to see what he can bring in the future.
And they beat the Saints. You
Oh,
can't go
exactly.
wrong. Drew
Right.
Brees actually said he was proud of him at the end of the game.
Yeah, he looked great. I think, too, the offense is centered all around him. So this is his team right now. And for a young guy to have that team have that much confidence in a young guy like that says a lot about his athletic ability.
All right. Well, let's also talk about which of the 5 rookies, because you also had Brendan Whedon of Cleveland, probably had the worst of the group at 3 picks, no touchdowns. You had Russell Wilson, who almost led his team to a game-winning drive, a little bit of controversy. We'll talk about that later on, involving referees. We had Andrew Luck, who had a pick, or 3 picks rather, and a touchdown. He had very similar stats to Peyton Manning in his first ever game. And then, of course, we had Ryan Tannehill for Miami. Didn't have the greatest game. He threw 3 interceptions as well. Out of those quarterbacks, does Robert Griffin seem like the one that's most promising and will have a brighter future?
I still think Luck is more promising. Just his poise, his knowledge of the game. You worry a lot in the NFL about guys like Robert the Griffin who are mobile like that, but eventually when they're moving at high speed, they're going to meet that 260-pound linebacker moving at a high speed. You know, Andrew Luck's not going to put himself in that position because he's not going to be running around like Griffin is. You know, I think there's more potential for injury for Griffin, but there's more potential for excitement with Griffin, where Luck, you know, really Luck could be the next coming of Peyton Manning, just his poise and the way he moves. And I think, too, is he going to be able to deal with the pressure of having to live up to filling number 18 shoes? And I think that's going to be, you know, only time will tell whether he can live up and carry that weight.
Yeah, I think Luck's going to, he's very similar to Peyton Manning, where he's not going to really expose himself to possibly getting hurt. He's not going to run through the middle and try to get a first down. I don't think Peyton runs more than 2 times a season, but I think Griffin is a guy that's like a Michael Vick that kind of throws his body out there every once in a while. And sometimes he gets up, sometimes he doesn't, and there's going to be a few times that he's probably not going to get up.
I feel the way that Griffin plays kind of reminds me of Donovan McNabb a little bit.
Yeah.
It's his team, and he has a chance to control it, and has a good arm too as well. All right, we'll take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more Gloves Are Off.